Welcome to Studio Snack, a monthly food podcast about design with nerdery, a guest and a creative experiment. I'm Lydia Thornley, a designer, illustrator, live sketcher and speaker.
And I'm Narcisa Oleda, and I help businesses to find their way through branding.
This month we're chatting about Mother's Day. It's food traditions, handed down family recipes. But it isn't Mother's Day everywhere.
No, it's not. When I used to work at Molton Brown, and we had to run the campaign a few times a year because in the UK and the US, for example, they did different days.
Oh, that's interesting.
In the UK and in Ireland is the fourth Sunday of Lent, which in United States, for example, is the second Sunday of May. In Spain is the first Sunday of May. And in Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, and that sort of area is celebrated the 21st of March. In Thailand, it's on the 12th of August in honor of the Queen Circuit. And in Central America, like Mexico, Salvador, and Guatemala, is celebrated 10th of May, which is also very important because it's my birthday.
Yay!
And in Mexico, for example, it's really important because mothers are like the most important member of the family. And it was decided by the government that it would be on the Guadalupe Virgin Day that they would celebrate the Mother's Day. And they celebrate it in a very colorful way. They bring lots of flowers and lots of presents to the moms and perfumes and all that sort of things. And it's also a national holiday, so they take the moms out in restaurants to celebrate. And you actually have to book really in advance, otherwise you lose your space because it just gets totally booked up.
So our friends out there who are mothers, here's what we've learned. If you're really organised, you could travel the world having an endless Mother's Day.
Exactly. So do that. That's really funny. So Lydia, I'm sure you have some nerdery for us, don't you?
Of course I do. And that movement of dates is interesting. It seems to be seasonal or even in response to world events. France's Mother's Day is a post-World War II thing. The government declared the last Sunday in May the Day of Mothers. It was something about rebuilding the population after the war. And the same thing happened after World War I, where mothers were given medals. There's a traditional flower-shaped cake given as a gift. And here, ads about Mother's Day often show things like breakfast in bed made by the children, but it's rooted in Mothering Sunday, a Christian religious festival on the fourth Sunday of Lent. And in the 1700s, young servants would get the day off to spend with their families. Girls would bake fruit cakes for their mothers. Just the girls, it seems to be. Boys can bake cakes too. And these were symbol cakes, which are now more associated with Easter. But the tradition of people who had moved away from home being given the day off started much earlier in the Middle Ages, and this included children as young as 10, which tells us something about child labour perhaps. There's a 10-day Hindu religious festival in autumn, Durga, which involves weeks of food preparation, and Ethiopia has the Antrost festival at the end of the rainy season, and that involves a big feast. And the US Mother's Day, as you said, is on the second Sunday of May. And that started when a woman called Anna Jarvis held a memorial service for her mother. And this did at the time the equivalent of going viral. It was declared a national holiday, which Anna Jarvis tried to stop. She was angry that it had become commercialised.
Fair enough.
And researching Mother's Day got us chatting about family recipes. Narcis, how does it go in your family?
Yeah, so whenever I ask, so my mom doesn't like cooking to start with, but she's the best cook in the world, of course. And when I ask her for a recipe, she always tells me the ingredients, but the problem that I always find is that she gives me a measurements such as just about that, or you'll get the feel of it. And if I ask her how long do I need to cook it, she'll say, oh, you'll see it. There are some dishes in Spain, in the Spain culture, that I would say that my mom is the best. But if there is one particular one that the whole nation would say their mom is the best, is the tortilla de patata, the Spanish omelette. But there is only one truth, perfect, best Spanish omelette, which is my mom's anyway. Mom's cooking is actually like a measurement bar for everyone. Everyone knows, or everyone compares the dishes with their mom, so you know if it's better or worse than your mom. There's also like an Instagram account called Spain Says, and they have like a whole section talking about mums, and I would say that it's so consistent with all mums. I'll give you a couple of examples, but it's worth having a look. But they say like Spanish mothers don't say keep looking carefully. They say if I go there and I found it, you'll see, or something like Spanish mothers don't say don't lie to me. They say what? Do you think I was born yesterday or what?
That thing about general quantities is really interesting, and I found a piece on it in The Guardian. Pinches and handsful of this and that instead of exact quantities. And it rings true in my own family recipes, and it's how I cook. It's a proper thing in the Indian subcontinent too, an estimation, there's even a word for it. The way my handed down family recipes are written is hilarious. I got some out for this podcast, and there's a lot of flinging and chucking and advice on how to get the all-important fresh yeast in the bread recipe, which involved fluttering your eyelashes in the bakery. They were different times. This was in the 1970s, and the language spoke of my mum's approach to handing down those skills. She refused to teach us how to cook because she feared it would damn us to traditional housewifery. But she did teach us how to shop, how to recognise good ingredients, and how to tell by smell if something was fresh or off. So it's that instinctive way of cooking.
That's really good though.
Yeah, and of course there are many famous food businesses and chefs where recipes have gone from generation to generation. Here in East London, we've got Pellicci's in Bethnal Green, there's the 5th generation family bakery Rinkoff's, and amongst shelves, well, in a way, amongst chefs, there's the Roux family, and I've heard Angela Hartnett talking in interviews about learning from and being influenced by her grandmother. But here's the thing, now that families these days are so often chosen rather than blood relatives, particularly when people have moved to another country, does that change what a family recipe is?
That's a very good question. And this month's WhatsApp interview comes straight away from Turns entrepreneurs. Jenan Al-Saik, founder of Mielas, and she's from Arabia Saudi. And what we asked her was, what does it mean to be able to cook food from home? And that's what she told us.
For me, it means a lot. It means that I can go back to these moments where I used to have meals with my family and friends. When I feel lonely here, I normally go and make a dish I used to have with them and imagine myself having it with all of them.
The other question I asked her is, how do you get around with ingredients that they might not be able in the UK? And that's what she told us.
Normally try and Google ingredients. I try to check my local supermarkets, check other ethnic supermarkets, and explore the standard supermarkets for other things that I need. For example, a certain type of rice that is used here for pudding, dessert. We use it for savoury dishes. So it was quite nice to find it in Sainsbury's and Waitrose and other supermarkets. But if I can't really find it, I normally try and learn how to make it myself.
And finally, I asked her, how do you translate the food to English palate? Because that's also quite important. And this is what she said.
By using milder spices and easy to find ingredients, serve dishes in familiar ways, like smaller portions, for example. Change some dishes to turn them to vegetarian, as being vegetarian is a big thing in the UK.
That's fascinating, and if you want to look up to them, they're a fascinating organisation. They support refugee entrepreneurs, and they have a couple of food events per year where you can go and try out and comment on some of the dishes that the food businesses are making. It's absolutely delicious. You can eat your way around the world. For this month's experiment, because we've been thinking about how our family recipes are worded, we decided to do an experiment on cooking with words. Narcis, what did you do?
So I took your brief for first time ever, word by word, and I cooked it. So it was quite fun and interesting because what I did was I wrote all the ingredients in design, and then I created a saucepan also written, and then what I did was putting the ingredients in the order that I would think I would cook them, and with all the measurements that more or less I thought would look like alright, like that much and all that things. And and I end up like having like a very, as maybe a slightly chaotic but quite interesting dish cooked in words.
I started by making two images where I brought together familiar kitchen equipment, my mum's mixing bowl and my Pyrex mixing jug, and handwritten words. And in the bowl, I put method from flinging stuff in to waiting until bread dough looked as though it was about to walk out.
I love that.
Then for the jug, I took off all the measurements and I replaced them with pinch, about, some of, enough, not crucial, things like that. And rereading the recipes had reminded me just how sensory cooking was. They're literally handing knowledge down. In the course of that experiment, I had found my mum's hand whisk, and I use it very rarely. And of course, most people would now use a food processor instead, but it's a wonderful mechanical thing. The sound reminds me of a lemon pudding we used to have when I was a kid. And I recorded it for this month's sound sample, although that was remarkably difficult. It was very hard not to make it sound hard and mechanical in a way that it isn't by feel. So I had to record it a lot of times to get the sound soft enough to reflect my memory of what it was for. And when I illustrated it, it had to have movement. It's wonderfully engineered, all cogs and wheels. Then later, I got out my cookie cutters that were my mum's. And they were used by both of us. I still use them quite a lot now. And they're a bit battered because of that. But they reminded me of Russian matryoshka dolls, where figures are nested inside each other. And then I played with the word hand, using my letter cookie cutters, which happened to be in my mum's favourite colour, which was shocking pink. And my original plan was to emphasise the and that's in the word hand, because you're switching from generation to generation by flipping the H so that you had a shift in emphasis between the four characters. But then I turned the A on its head for the down arrow. Very difficult aligning cookie cutters on a baking tray though. Shoot stylists earn their money well, I tell you. So what has all of this told us about design?
So I have written many times my mom's recipes, as I said before, and when I called her, and the measurements and all that stuff, it's always just a pinch of this or about that much. And then also the other thing is a publisher from my town published a book of the recipes from the families of my town, which is called St. Paul. And it was quite interesting when you look at it, because they put measurements again, and I just feel like a lot of these recipes don't come properly with measurements. They just come with the feel. It's like when I have to cook something and I don't like to follow recipes, and that's why I cannot bake. Is that I just kind of go by intuition and trying to get the feel. And sometimes if I'm tired or I feel a bit sad, or the food feels the same, and the same with the excitement. When I'm really happy and more excitement, I think the food also kind of reflects that.
That's very true. I think there are so many visual cues in what we've been doing as well, which links us back to design. I had, as I looked through my family recipes, the joyful reminder of Basildon Bond writing paper, not a distant, extravagantly named relation of James Bond. There was a spoof. But writing paper from a time when people wrote letters. I was going to write about it in the past tense, as it's an imperial size, available in Duke and post-quarto sizes, but it is actually still available. You can order it online. But I wondered if we're losing that way of cooking by feel, and that made me think about how that plays out in design companies, from the methods we use to how agencies hire. Has it all become uninspiringly measurable, or are we still experimental when nobody's looking? And I wondered about the very nature of family recipes. There's memory in them, there's place in them. Can we ever really reproduce that, or do we add something of ourselves and pass it on?
I think you always do bring something that is your own. Like I'm sure, like my mom sometimes takes a shortcut of a very classical recipe that her mom taught her, and she just goes and takes a little shortcut that it still tastes amazing or even better, because there is like the emotion attachment as well as it just tastes nice.
Well, I'm sure the cakes I've given you this morning when I walked into the studio, because I thought I need to do some baking for this, so I brought along some rock buns. And I would put money on the way I bake them now being different from the way my mum baked them, because after years in East London I developed a generous hand with the spices. You can't not in a land of aunties. And I have recently swapped in raisins for currants.
Oh, nice.
So it's at least 2 steps removed from the original recipe.
I'm really, really looking forward to them. We're gonna add the sound bites to the blog in a few days, and we also gonna put together all the experiments in our social media, and you can find us pretty much in the handle of We Are Studio Snack or wearestudiosnack.co.uk.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back next time with another studio snack.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye.